What it do, cuckolds? Your boy's earlier video where I mentioned NXT and Delta got me thinking. Obviously, it didn't get me thinking about NXT and Delta. It got me thinking about the concept of debuts. Now, wrestling is supposed to be exciting, right? And excitement is good. It's difficult, however, to make wrestling exciting all the time. You know, to make something exciting, including wrestling, you need people to just kind of like go and attack the storyline, make every turn, every swerve, every moment feel great. And this is easier said than done. I understand this. Every time when I say like, oh man, this was boring, that was lame, you know, I do understand that it's difficult to make everything exciting, right? But as we've seen before, especially in the past, this is definitely doable. Now, one thing that's especially exciting is debuts and other built-in things in wrestling that are just inherently exciting. So for example, title changes, hell, title shots, number one contenders matches, like the Royal Rumble, for example. A lot of these things are big time exciting, right? But they're not difficult to do. Unlike the general excitement that you need in a storyline, these things are easy to do, right? It's easy to just have a number one contenders match. You know, you've decided in your head the number one contender is going to be, I don't know, DIY for the tag team titles, and you just have them do a tournament, right? And the match for the number one contendership is exciting because it informs you on what's going to happen at the pay-per-view. Now, there's nothing, in my opinion, more exciting in wrestling than a well-done debut, right? Well-done debuts, in my opinion again, are the bread and butter of wrestling, right? They are one of the most important factors and one of the things that I personally get excited about the most. Now, personally, my favorite type of debut, there's two types that I like. One of them is like by far the best one, which is the sudden out of nowhere debut. Think of someone like Brock Lesnar or John Cena, right? Where it's like, you don't know what's happening, right? The guy comes out, you're like, who the hell is this guy? And then you learn who that guy is in subsequent weeks. Another example of that would be like Umaga, right? Where it's like one day, all of a sudden, Armando Alejandro Estrada comes out and he's like, this is Umaga. And then Umaga comes out and you're like, oh, this is just like personally, when I saw Umaga the first time, I'm like, oh, this is like a fat jobber. Like, you know, because the way he explained him, you would think that the next Kane is coming out. And you're like, oh, no, it's just like a fat guy who is not that tall. But anyways, whatever, it is what it is. The point is, it's a debut and it's exciting, right? The concept of a debut is inherently exciting. Now, with all that being said, we find ourselves in a situation where debuts are being ruined sometimes before they even happen. Now, I'm not going to focus on the Zarya debut very much because, you know, this could be a one-off. This could be like a big mistake. But basically, her debut is a vignette of her walking through like a nuclearly destroyed area. And then she's looking at a road sign. And the road sign, it says like Highway 10 and like Route 27 or something, right? So, of course, now that means she's going to come there October 27th. Which obviously people were wrong because then she debuted like yesterday. But whatever. Anyways, the point stands, right? The idea is that it's like this goofy ass overproduced debut. What happened? She went to Triple H. Like, this is what we're supposed to believe. She went to Triple H and said, hey, my gimmick is that I'm a post-apocalyptic idiot and I want to debut this way, right? Why not just have her debut? You know, if she is going to be someone that is a post-apocalyptic dummy, right? Then there's no point in her acting like she's not that, right? Someone who really believes their gimmick isn't going to have like a vignette that is manufactured by the WWE, right? Imagine, for example, like, I'll give you a great example. Imagine, for example, the Wyatt Six, right? If instead there was this overproduced graphic of the Wyatt Six being like, the Wyatt Six, like, here's an action figure of the Wyatt Six, and they debut on, like, you know, tomorrow, right? You'd be like, oh, this takes away all the mystique, all the mysticism, all the mystery from the Wyatt Six, right? Same thing with her. But the bigger culprit here is this, like, implication that happens with every debut nowadays that we're supposed to, like, care. And we're supposed to kind of almost know who this girl is already, right? Like, this really just caters only to the smart beard demographic, And you're like, oh, Zarya's here. And then the debuts now and the returns are just someone's music hits and they just show up. And then everybody around them reacts, right? And usually it's the same reaction of like, whoa, what just happened, you know? That's not good. That, in my opinion, wastes the debut, right? That's why we haven't had a memorable debut since like The Shield. You know what I mean? The Shield, that was an excellent debut. Why? Because it follows the hater formula, right? You have no idea who these people are, you know, before they debut. Now, some of us, like me, I already knew who Seth Rollins and Jon Moxley were, right? Obviously, I didn't know Roman Reigns because he was like brand new. But like I knew who these guys were in terms of like their name, right? And I knew that as a result, these guys were going to be presented as at least somewhat of a big deal, right? I knew that Seth Rollins and Dean Ambrose were these like big signings. And I knew that these guys weren't going to be like jobbers, right? And then there's Roman Reigns, who you could tell looks like a star. Oh, he's the least talented member. Shut up. I don't want to hear that crap, right? But the idea is the debut was done perfectly because randomly and out of nowhere, I think they attacked like Ryback, right? They just attack Ryback. They just destroy him. And at that time, Ryback was getting this massive main event push. So it's like you have these three guys that are destroying essentially a massive main eventer. You know? That's badass, right? No debut, in my opinion, is better than that of Brock Lesnar, where if you haven't seen this, just go see it, right? You can find it on YouTube easily. Just write Brock Lesnar Raw debut, right? Basically, there's like a hardcore match between like Al Snow, Spike Dudley, and Maven. You know what I mean? And so all three of these guys are like undercard jobbers, right? Brock Lesnar appears out of nowhere and just destroys all three of them, but with like big time power moves. He power bombs Spike Dudley like 4 times. He does an F5 to Maven, who sells it perfectly. He does like a one-handed spine buster type thing to Al Snow through a trash can. He no-sells like a Spike Dudley hockey stick to the head. He breaks the hockey stick in the head, and then he just no-sells it, and then just clotheslines Spike Dudley. It's just an amazing debut. And then you have Paul Heyman there just to add, like that's a good way to use Paul Heyman. You know, you have him there, and then you're like, oh my God, who's this guy? Oh, is that Paul Heyman? Oh, what's Paul Heyman doing here, right? And all of a sudden you're like, oh, we're going to learn more about this later on. And Paul Heyman then comes out and explains, this is the next big thing, Brock Lesnar. You know what I mean? So with that being said, which is a great moniker, by the way, the next big thing, Brock Lesnar. So with all that, right, that's a great debut. But nowadays, we look at the debuts that we've had recently, and they're all garbage debuts. You know what I mean? Like, first of all, they're garbage because they have to go through NXT, number one. 2, even if they didn't have to go through NXT, the NXT debut itself is crap, right? The NXT debut format kind of goes like this, right? There'll be like some random ass NXT event, and they'll be like, oh, look, in the crowd, it's like Hideo Kakinami, right? He's like the next Japan, you know, like midweight champion of like Osaka or something like that, right? And then it'll be the guy like smiling, right? And they're like, oh, you're gonna sign this guy next, right? And then he comes out, he has no gimmick. That's one of the ways to debut people in NXT. Another way is through this bullshit ass breakout tournament thing, right? Where 8 nameless nobodies come out, and the winner, in this case Obafemi, is just introduced as, I'm Obafemi now. You know, I have no gimmick. Nothing sets me apart in terms of my presentation, except for the fact that I look different and I talk a little bit different, which might be enough. But imagine if the debut was just handled better, right? You know, that's how you get a big push. So the fact that they don't care enough about debuts, to me, is absurd, right? Look how much people marked out at the debut of the Wyatt Six, right? Rightfully so, because they've been denied debuts like that for far too long. So they're like, oh, shit, you know, I need a debut. The debut needs to be good. And here we are, right? We find ourselves in a situation where to get a good debut, we have to wait like 5 years. And then eventually we get one. And then we realize, oh, it's Dexter Lumis and Joe Gacy, and this is going to go absolutely nowhere. But it is what it is, right? People mark out, people freak out because it's unexpected. It's sudden, right? And even though they kind of like tease people with it, nobody knew what day it would happen, right? And also nobody knew what it would look like. Nobody knew that, you know, it would be like Dexter Lumis wearing a buzzard mask, right? Maybe we had ideas, but we didn't think it was going to be like that. That's what a good debut is. Another good debut, in NXT, which serves as an example of how you can do it well, is Velveteen Dream. Remember those little vignettes where it's like this like Prince-like music, you know? It's like doon 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 doon, right? And then it's like perfection. It's like a woman's voice, like perfection. You see like a silhouette of Velveteen Dream, like acting all flamboyant, and then in the end, it's like Velveteen Dream, and you're like, what the fuck is like what the fuck did I just watch, right? Like, surely this guy's name cannot be Velveteen Dream, but it was, and it was an amazing gimmick. Velveteen Dream, you know what I mean? And you're like, oh, this is so cool. Like, I want to see what's next with this thing, right? It's unique, it's different, it's a guy doing Prince, and then the people like us that probably put it together, oh, it's Patrick Clark, you're like, this guy's amazing. You know, this guy's got all the tools, right? So that's the kind of stuff that you want to see. You know, there have been good debuts, but not that many of them. You know what I mean? They debut people through these like bullshit storylines. It would be like, imagine how much better it would be, for example, if Bronco Nima and his partner, who are now like, I think they're going to be jobbers, and then they're going to get released, and they're going to end up in TNA as like some, you know, disgruntled ex-WWE tag team. I don't think they're going anywhere, you know. They lost to like Hank and Tank. They're like a comedy team essentially now. So imagine if these guys didn't debut as these two guys are like, we grew up together, and then it shows like two younger versions of themselves like in the hood. It's like, what if they just debuted by attacking like, I don't know, like Chase U? That would be a great team for them to attack, right? So it's like these college educated like varsity types, right? And they got attacked by like the people out the mud, right? That would have been sick. So they just attacked and they brutalized them, right? They just brutalize them, and they're like, and they just scream at the camera. Right? And then you can explain that, you know, Bronco Nima is like one guy, and then the other guy, whoever his name is the other guy. But who cares, right? Who cares about them now? They're just two guys. I thought they had some potential, but at this point, it's like you have like 2-3 weeks, in my opinion, to capitalize on the potential. Otherwise, it's gone, right? So the thing, I didn't mention this on the NXT review, but the fact that Obafemi is still interested in the North American title tells you all you need to know, right? Same thing with, and I'll be consistent, same thing with Braun Breaker, you know? Braun Breaker and Obafemi, they lost the mid-card title. They should move directly to the World Heavyweight title. Like, Braun Breaker even teased it. He went to Gunther and he, like, you know, touched his belt, and he's like, I'm coming for this, basically, right? But then he goes after the mid-card title again. Same thing with what's it called? With Obafemi. At least with Obafemi, it makes a little bit of sense because he lost in, like, a roll-up, right? So he's like, you know what I mean? Like, I got screwed, essentially. Like, I'm going to beat everybody up, right? But that's how that goes down, cucks. The point is that debuts are extremely important, and nobody is doing them correctly anymore. It seems that nobody is interested in having great debuts. A great debut tells you just enough about what's coming, or tells you nothing, but it never tells you too much. And a great debut is never like someone just shows up, right? Like, when I'll tell you this. I drove to Philadelphia many years ago to see the Royal Rumble that was there, right? The one that Nakamura won. So, you know, it was a good event, but at the end of the day, Nakamura won the Royal Rumble, and it's like, he's like the only one, I think, ever since like Hacksaw Jim Duggan. He's the only one since 2000 to win the Rumble and then never become WWE champion, right? There's people that won the Rumble and didn't win at WrestleMania, but subsequently they became WWE champion, right? Like, subsequently meaning like in the next few months, you know, they were the guy, and then they did it. Like The Rock is an example, Edge, you know, fucking, what's it called? Randy Orton that one year, you know, he didn't beat Triple H, but eventually he did, right? Nakamura is never going to be WWE champion. If he does, it has nothing to do with that Royal Rumble. So with all that being said, the fact of the matter is the fact of the matter, cuckolds. And the reality is exactly what I've been saying to you. Like, when the Royal Rumble ended, because they finished with the Women's Royal Rumble, right? I think Asuka won. I don't remember, to be honest. I think Asuka won. I started leaving because I'm like, I'm going to beat traffic, right? And then by the time I was in the parking lot, like, that's when Ronda Rousey debuted. I just left immediately, you know? And I'm like, oh shit, I missed Ronda Rousey's debut. But then I went and I saw it. The debut was just her coming out. So I'm like, oh great, I'm so happy that I was able to beat traffic. I have no interest in just seeing Ronda Rousey. You know, a flying fuck. You know what I mean? I don't give a flying shit. And that's the thing, right? They think that just seeing the person is enough. Now, okay, fine. Maybe we can make an exception about Ronda Rousey, right? Because she's a mainstream star, blah, 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 blee, blee, blee. Who knows and who cares? But you cannot treat the debut of Ronda Rousey the same as the debut of Delta, Zarya, right? Because this person is not a star, and nobody knows who she is, and nobody cares. So, debuting them the same way, from what I understand, not a good idea, cuckolds. And with all that being said, take care of yourself, cuckwads.